Councillor Caroline Karimi Govanlu, and I will be chairing the Planning Committee meeting today. On the top table today are Richard Smith, Principal Planning Officer, who will be presenting the first application. We have Christopher Rickman in the room, who will be presenting the second application, Ben Burgess, Eleanor Lammick, Vice Chair, and Lucy Palmer, Democratic Services. We are not expecting a fire drill today, but if the alarm does sound, the fire exits are clearly signed in green. This meeting is being live streamed. Members of the public are welcome to film proceedings as long as they are not disruptive to the conduct of the meeting. If anyone wishes to film or record this meeting, please identify yourselves now. Thank you. Please can you ensure all your mobile phones and electronic devices are turned to silent. Councillors, please do not use your mobile phone whilst the committee is in session. We will have comfort breaks if necessary at various times. If you must use your mobile, then please leave the room. However, you will appreciate that this could result in you not being able to vote on the matter under discussion at the time you leave the room. The order of business is as set out on the agenda. Members of the public can only speak if prior arrangements have been made, in accordance with the Council's scheme of public speaking. The time allocated is a maximum of 5 minutes per speaker or parish council, with a maximum of 15 minutes per category. Only people who have registered to speak will be able to address the committee. The order will be as follows. The planning officer will present the application. Public speakers will then be asked to present their case, followed by questions from members of the committee to clarify something the speaker has said and not to invite the speaker to put further points across. The order of public speaking is Parish Town Council first, followed by objectors and finally supporters. Council members who are not members of this committee will then be invited to speak for the allocated time of a maximum of 5 minutes per speaker. This will be followed by questions from members of the committee. Again, these questions will only be to clarify something the speaker has said and not to invite the speaker to put further points across. The committee will then discuss and determine the application. Finally, there is no provision for members of the public to circulate documents, photographs, etc. at the meeting. Are there any questions before I open the meeting? No? Thank you. Does any members have any declarations of interest? Joe?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm predetermined on the first item, which is the application at Coltishall, and I will leave the room for the discussion and for the vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No. Lucy, do you have any apologies, please?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Vincent and Councillor Tipple.
Thank you. I hope you've all read the minutes of the meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 19th of June. Is everybody happy with those minutes? Are there any matters arising from those minutes? Okay, thank you. Right, we'll go to application 1, which is Coltishall, land east side of 16 St John's Close. And I'll hand over to Richard. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. So this is agenda item number 1. This is land east side of 16 St John's Close, Coltishall. This is for a one self-build eco-friendly dwelling with garaging, landscaping and associated works. I'll take you through the slides now. So the site is located at the eastern end of St John's Close in Coltishall. The close provides access to a small number of detached properties, each with their own access and parking provided in curtilage. The close also serves a doctor's surgery and the local primary school. Otherwise, the cul-de-sac road here serves an access into the field itself. St John's Close is situated at a central point within Coltishall village, where opposite lies the village hall and the recreation ground and cricket ground. This is the application site edged red. The site is an arable agricultural field at present. It's enclosed by hedge boundaries to all sides. and some, such as on the north side, are of greater substance than others. The village's existing settlement limits extend up to the end of the cul-de-sac and broadly follow the eastern edge of the school building and the residential gardens to the north and south. The proposal is being considered under policy 7.5 of the Greater Norwich Local Plan, which considers self-build and custom windfall housing development outside of defined settlement limits. Here, a small-scale residential development of up to 3 dwellings for self-build / custom-built homes will be considered, and Part 1 of the policy outlines that this could be based on sites within or / adjacent to settlements with a defined boundary, such as here. Colchester is considered to be a settlement and the site lies immediately adjacent. Form and character are important considerations alongside density, housing density, landscape and natural and environmental considerations. This slide shows the proposed dwelling. It's a 3-bedroom, as I say, a self-built dwelling set to the western end of the site, and the access is taken from St John's Close itself. The site would contain a garden set to the east with an orchard area also planted as part of biodiversity and nutrient neutrality offerings. This plan shows the floor plan of the predominantly single-storey ground floor. That's the image on the left. And on the right is the image of the upper floor, which is principally to serve the main bedroom. The main accommodation is on the ground floor. The roof would contain solar panels. The plans also show carport and garage accommodation. Turning to some elevations now, from top to bottom. Top is the north elevation as facing the school. The middle image is the rear elevation as seen from the proposed garden. And the bottom image is a section view showing the building on its southern side with the school in the background. The proposed bespoke design of the building as a self-built dwelling reflects cues from the neighbouring primary school, set in its own plot where in the background the school will be seen contextually in its appropriate approach. The dwelling would be constructed mainly of render with some wood cladding and small elements of stone walling and brick to break up the elevations. The wood cladding gives a softened material which would be appropriate on this edge of settlement site, as also seen against the mature hedgerow and tree-lined boundaries. The form and materials very much tie in with the adjacent school building whilst retaining an element of individual design that is characteristic of many self-built properties. Here, these proposed images show some further elevations, and from top to bottom we have the front, which would be viewed from St John's Close. We've got in the middle there the rear, and at the bottom we've got the south side. In terms of energy efficiency, we've mentioned obviously it's an eco-friendly dwelling. Its design is developed relative to the building regulations Part L1 2021, which is the conservation of fuel and power. There's a high level of insulation, an airtight construction, energy efficient design generally. We've also got low, as we've mentioned, low PV panels, solar panels, a low or zero carbon technology with air source heat pumps, low energy LED lighting throughout. This photograph shows the access at the end of the cul-de-sac, approaching the site towards the east. The boundary wall of number 16, St John's Close, is also now in view. This top photograph shows the site entrance and number 16 more in view. This is a view looking towards the southeast now. At the bottom, we've got the images which show the site when just inside the site entrance, looking broadly south to southwest. Number 16 again is the property in view with the conservatory. This photograph shows the site looking generally more south to southeast, and it shows the existing field as presently presented. This top left photograph shows the site at its boundary with the primary school, and the image on the right shows the same, but with the access now in shot as well. The views are generally here looking broadly northeast. This photograph shows the Site entrance looking back towards the west, again just inside the entrance itself, and shows St John's Close. And this is an indicative visualisation showing the proposal as which will be seen from St John's Close near to the school entrance. It should be understood that this is based on an initial set of drawings submitted in May 2023 at validation of the application, which the actual drawings have themselves been subsequently revised and updated with some minor adjustments. So that includes some subtle changes to the materials and detailed elevation or treatment. However, this image otherwise gives a good representation of how the proposed dwelling of this broad design and mass would be seen in the street scene contextually. So as set out in the report, with particular reference drawn to GNLP policy 7.5, the addition of a single dwelling set at the western end where the settlement boundary is currently drawn, located in a sustainable point within the village with community facilities like the school, the medical centre, the village hall in close proximity. The proposal is considered acceptable in the context of this recently adopted policy. Therefore, the recommendation is to delegate authority to the Assistant Director of Planning to approve subject to conditions and assign Section 106 legal agreement for self-build and dry rooms mitigation, and no objection being received from Natural England upon a nutrient neutrality solution being put forward by the applicant. Note the word legal as inserted as an update to the recommendation. The conditions as listed are shown in the report pack, but also to add today a construction traffic management plan, which will be condition 14. And in view of the merits of the scheme's eco-credentials, as a further update at the report at para 5.42, and as a positive benefit of the scheme, a condition number 15 attached to ensure that the finished dwelling design is constructed with a sustainability report that confirms the delivery of the suggested measures set out in the energy and sustainability statement, which is obviously what we've just been talking about earlier in the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Are there any points that need clarifying by the committee? Ken?
On the nutrient neutrality, I know it was requested delegated authority to the officers, but has anything been further come forward?
Yeah, so we've actually got to quite an advanced stage on this. So the applicants did submit a nutrient neutrality impact assessment, which was early this year in January. So that document's gone off to Natural England, and they've not outlined a long shopping list of requirements, but they have asked for some clarifications on certain aspects. So that has now been received, and obviously we've got to work through that with the applicant to address that before we reconsult them. We don't see it as a major issue. The applicants have said themselves that if they don't obviously come to an agreement through the impact assessment to actually achieve a nutrient neutral position on site, there is the other option of purchasing credits from Norfolk Environmental Credits, and they haven't ruled that out as an alternative or a further option on top of the mitigation that's been provided in the actual site itself. The mitigation is presently shown as a lot of it you can see there is the orchard area. There's a substantial number of additional native planting to the boundary. There's also a packaged treatment plant that's being proposed that would deal with obviously the outlet from the waste from the actual dwelling. And I think generally speaking, if we get to a point where Natural England are content with what's been shown in the impact assessment, that will be worked up into what we call a shadow habitats regulation assessment. So in essence, we've got quite far, but we haven't quite got to the point where we can obviously just tick that box. So what the applicants were keen to do is obviously take this forward to this committee, and then we would obviously seek to deal with that with them through delegated matters subject to any approval today. We could potentially do that, but I think we are confident that either way, whether it's on site or through a mixture of on site and stroke credits, that we're confident that that will just be a procedural matter that can be achieved.
Thank you, Chair.
Paul?
Thank you, Chair. in the report, you talk about using tilted balance as a way of assessing this planning application. Can you just take us through the logic then of that thought process?
So yeah, the tilted balance is in a situation where since December last year we had the revised National Planning Policy Framework. At the moment, we are unable, as a council, due to the temporary impact of nutrient neutrality, to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. This application was received back in May last year, so any applications like this that are received before that December threshold, we have to apply the tilted balance due to that temporary position that we aren't able to currently demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. Now, in this case, the tilted balance obviously weighs in a presumption in favour of development, unless obviously the harm is greater than the benefits. In this case, also the fact that we're in an area where obviously nutrient neutrality is an impact, and there is a potential impact in terms of the obviously the Broad's SAC. So through the nutrient neutrality impact assessment and shadow regulation habitat assessment, we're confident we can deal with the obviously the side in terms of obviously the SAC and the Broads. In terms of obviously the harms of this particular scheme, we've outlined in the report where we have found some harms, and we've found them to be fairly minor, but the benefits we feel far outweigh obviously those harms, and that's why the tilted balance is weighed in favour of the presumption in favour of development. So we don't feel that there's any reason why the harm should be seen against the benefits, and that's why we've come with a recommendation of approval.
Okay, can I come back then with a couple of what I feel like are harms? So we're building outside of the settlement area. That seems to have been sort of broadly swept under the carpet. I appreciate that the GNLP allows for those sort of things, but Coltishall was already just had last meeting. We had 30 houses approved that were also outside of the boundary. So there's quite a lot. There's a lot of development going on. That seems to me to be outside of the settlement boundary here. It's not. Probably we should include. Not consider that, but that's the wider issues. So we're losing farmland. To me, it seems like this development then opens up the rest of that farmland to be used, for development as well. So, again, I don't know how you treat that in a tilted balance, whether or not you should include that or not. So, that sits uncomfortably for me. And also it's outside of school as well. I mean, we know what every neighbourhood has problems with parking around schools. And adding an extra entrance, I no doubt will imagine that a lot of parents will park along that road that's in front of the school. So those things worry me a little bit about this, that you are, effectively going to disrupt the school. There's a lot of cars that are coming in and out of that entrance and out of that area. You've got the medical centre as well, which is going to have, I'm sure, struggle for parking. So for me, that's a negative aspect of this, and I don't know whether you've considered that. Have you considered that very much in your discussions?
Yes, I mean certainly in terms of the agricultural land, obviously it is a parcel which is grade 3. It's not. We've recognised it's not grade 1 or 2, the higher quality land. We don't know which subcategory it falls within in terms of grade 3 or 3A, 3B. But in terms of the actual size of the field parcel, it's we think fairly constrained in terms of its efficiency for a good quality, efficient operation for agricultural purposes. So we do recognise there is a small loss of land there, but not one which is sufficient to obviously be a harm that outweighs those benefits. In terms of the fact that it has encouraged parking and turning, we feel it's quite crucial that it shouldn't disrupt from any congestion that is happening around the school. We also additionally have added in a construction traffic management plan, which would ensure that because the site is of a sufficient size to take construction traffic, all of that should be done within the curtilage, and we would obviously look at making sure that any deliveries, etc., were outside of school time. So we have looked very carefully at that. I think the other thing to probably mention is that the Highways Authority have not raised any objection to the addition of one dwelling at the end of this cul-de-sac. So we've really relied on their advice in that regard. So we have definitely considered those issues. Yes. Chair.
Could I just make one point as well, please, Chair, if that's okay? I think the real thing to focus on in this application is rather than the tilted balance, but obviously the harms and the benefits of the scheme should be considered in the consideration of the application. I would focus more on policy 7.5 in this instance, because policy 7.5 of the GNLP does allow schemes of this type. So I would suggest, and it's for members to consider, but I'd suggest we have a scheme here that is policy compliant with the GNLP.
Bill, would you like to ask?
Are we opening the floodgates for building on agricultural land around Colchester? That's all I ask.
It's a fair question. I think I think that one of the reasons, going back to what Ben's just mentioned about 7.5, is we do have this policy now which allows for, we think, sites like this, which are very tight to the settlement edge boundary. We've been quite careful that obviously one dwelling would be seen in the context of being tight to the primary school. So whilst obviously we're looking at the wider field parcel, the reason why the size of the site has been proposed is to obviously also provide that neutrality mitigation on site. That doesn't mean to say that we would readily look to encroach further into the open countryside. I think one of the reasons this one is supported is because obviously it is very close to the cul-de-sac and the settlement edge. Any additional development further to the east, for example, is not something that we would necessarily be expecting or obviously wholeheartedly support. It is seen in the context of 7.5, and the 7.5 policy does say up to 3 dwellings. So, whilst this is just a single dwelling, I don't necessarily see great swathes of development coming off the back of this. It's very much in that context of that policy, 3 dwellings within settlements, so there's only a certain limit that we can accept dwellings in sites like this.
Anybody else? No? Okay, we'll go to public speaking. Can I ask Denise Griffiths to come forward, please? Denise, you have 5 minutes to speak. If you press the right-hand button, that will...
Hello, my name is Denise Griffiths and I live at 16 St John's Close and have done so for just under 25 years. For the last 4 years, my partner Richard Maxwell has lived there too, and I speak on behalf of us both. We strongly object to the application of a proposal to build a very large dwelling with garaging, landscaping and associated works. There is no demonstrated demand for self-build in Colchester, and this is supported by the planning appeal decision 2020/0964. We believe there are numerous good planning reasons why this application should not be approved as detailed. The location of the new development. It encroaches an undeveloped countryside, which is contrary to Policy 2 of the Joint Core Strategy. Reference to the Broadland Local Plan Development Management Policies, EN2, the proposed dwelling will have a negative and detrimental impact on the local area and characteristics of a rural landscape. The application is a large area, as you can see, with the proposed oversized dwelling much larger in comparison to all properties in St John's Close. If the planning is approved, we believe it could allow this site to become open to future predatory development. Despite the applicant, builder by trade, it will be for a single house. The application, if approved, will mean there will be a major loss of prime agricultural land and will consequently have a negative effect on the currently natural wildlife environment. So outside of the settlement area, The location of the proposed development is outside the settlement boundary. Its change of use to residential use is contrary to policy GC2 of the Broadland Development Management Plan document. The application does not satisfy the policy design points in the National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 79, because it is outside the village boundary and would be developed on productive agricultural land. And this has been farmed for crops annually for the past 25 years, since I have lived in Colchester, and hundreds of years before my time. The application has falsely stated that the site is a meadow and then later on an undeveloped field. Neither could be further from the truth, with active farming taking place every year providing food for the community. With regard to the highway safety and increased traffic, we note that Norfolk County Highways have no objection to this application, which we wholly refute. However, referring to policy TS3, the highway safety, and TS4, we do not believe the proposed application for develop does comply. This is because there are high levels of parking every day on the street that could result in the possibility of a major incident of highway safety, for example, the emergency vehicles not being able to gain access to and from the doctor's surgery. In fact, there was an emergency vehicle in the doctor's surgery last week. And also where there is potential risk to children crossing the road when being dropped off by parents and stepping out between cars, often in a hurry to drop off their children and turn around at the end of a no-through road. The proposed development will mean that vehicles needing to turn at the end of this no-through road will find this even more difficult, as there will be no turning area available due to the proposed property's access to remain clear. Parents' vehicles, supply vehicles, sometimes large catering lorries, and on occasions 52-seated coaches have all caused major bottlenecks and even blocked the no-through road at times. This application, if approved, will make the situation worse and increase the change of a major accident. With regard to policy TS4 and the parking guidelines detailed, we do not believe that the proposed development complies with this. St John's Close is a narrow, no-through road with a turning area at the end. It has a primary school and a doctor's surgery, which is congested most of the day and especially at peak times. The various vehicles stated have all at times meant that St John's Close has resembled a bottleneck, like a London suburb. I have gathered photographic evidence in the past year since May, which clearly shows this continual congestion, and these have been offered to Julie Fox. With the recent council approval of the Crocus building, potentially 55 houses in Rectory Road, which is actually at the top of St John's Close, the traffic in St John's Close is expected to significantly increase, with more patients, parents, children, and congestion in Rectory Road and St John's Close. We currently do not have the infrastructure in Colchester. My great concern is for the safety of the children, parents, elderly and disabled who use both the facilities trying to cross the congested road, which is already very dangerous. This proposed new development will only increase the risks. The impact of required construction vehicles near a school would also be a great hazard, dangerous and a concern to health and safety.
Oh, sorry, Denise, you've run out of time.
Oh, just one tiny bit left. This out of character, it's like literally a minute.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. So, being out of character, Colchester is a lovely village of outstanding natural beauty dating back to 1231 in King Henry III's era. It is on the River Bure and in the National Broads Park. It has quaint dwellings and does not have streetlights. The proposal of this very large, eco-friendly dwelling is totally out of character with surrounding properties and definitely is not in keeping with the village or local area. I believe the design plans would not significantly enhance the immediate setting, is totally out of character and is not sensitive to defining characteristics. The 9 houses in St John's Close have been built to complement each other, whereas the proposed development would be detrimental to these dwellings, the landscape and the village. The proposed oversized dwelling and land is significantly larger than any property in St John's Close or the neighbourhood. I believe I've detailed above sound planning reasons, and I urge to be referred back to as to why this application should be rejected. It's against the council's strategy, bring major safety and parking concerns, and the design is totally out of character with the community. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would you mind switching that off? Thank you. Does any member of the... Would you like to just stay there for a minute? Any member of the committee have anything they want to clarify from what the lady said? Paul? It's not a question, it's a clarification.
Okay, well, I'll try my best. I was just going to ask, with all the traffic that goes on, you're local to there. Have there been any accidents? Have there any recorded, accidents, I suppose, in that close?
I'm not aware of any because I'm out of the house during school times. I have heard screeching of tyres when people come up there, because obviously it's a 30-mile-an-hour limit, but you have the congestion of parked cars and little children going in between to cross the road. So I have at times heard the screeching of tyres. So maybe that didn't happen, it's cause for concern.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just very
Yeah,
quickly,
sure.
that's okay. Thank you, Chair. Just to say that obviously from North County Council Highways perspective, they will consider any accident data when they're looking at the application. And we've seen they've raised no objections to the scheme. So our view is that they've considered accident data as part of the development.
Okay, Denise, if you'd like to return to your seat, please. Thank you. And I would like to call forward Matthew Rook, please. Matthew, you know how these work? About 5 minutes.
Good morning, committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd like to give you an overview, if I may, of the proposal and address some of the key issues. We've also submitted our comments on the committee report, and these have been added to the supplementary schedule that you should have before you. This proposal is specifically for a self-build dwelling for our clients who are committed to building and living in a modern family home close to the many facilities within Coltishall. They have worked on the design, form and appearance of the dwelling with our architects and the council's planning team to ensure the dwelling is suitable for the site and its surroundings. The dwelling will incorporate modern construction techniques to reduce its energy needs and incorporates renewable energy technology in the form of solar PV on the southern roof slopes of the dwelling and the inclusion of an air source heat pump. The applicants live and work locally and have been searching for a suitable site for some time, and importantly they meet the council's self-build eligibility criteria. The proposed dwelling has positioned and designed so there will be no significant adverse effect on neighbours in terms of overlooking, loss of light or loss of privacy. The dwelling is located approximately 33 metres from the boundary with the nearest neighbour at number 16. The design is arranged principally with ground floor accommodation. There is one bedroom at first floor, but this looks out to the rear. The front elevation does have windows at first floor level, but these serve the double height entrance hall and stairway, so don't relate to habitable space and will not have an adverse impact on privacy. As you've heard, the Highway Authority raised no objection, subject to a condition that on-site parking and turning is provided, which will be complied with. Would like to also point out the turning area that exists will remain as part of this development. There's no proposals to close that. That facility will still exist for people who wish to turn at the end of St John's Close. The Council has recently adopted the Greater Norwich Local Plan, including Policy 7.5. This permits small-scale residential developments up to 3 dwellings for self-build and custom-built homes outside or adjacent to the settlement limit. These must be for people who meet the eligibility criteria and for development which meets the stated design criteria. Our clients meet these eligibility requirements and, as you've heard, also meet the design criteria, which has been considered by your council's design officer and has raised no objections. He asked us to change some of the external materials, which have been changed, and therefore raised, I think it's in the report, says no comments to make. The proposed dwelling therefore complies with adopted policy 7.5 and should be approved to deliver legitimate self-built dwellings. The committee report agrees that this proposal complies with 7.5. Committee report also states the council is unable to demonstrate a 5-year supply for those applications received before December 23. Therefore, it's necessary to assess whether any adverse effects of approving this application significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The committee report has made this assessment for you and concludes that the proposal is acceptable. The proposed dwelling is beyond the maximum distance where a connection to the main sewer must be achieved. Therefore, a high-quality private package treatment system will be installed. Our clients have engaged a drainage consultant who has produced 2 nutrient neutrality assessments. This latest one includes results of percolation testing, which evidences that the ground conditions are suitable for infiltration. The site is located in an area that the council has identified as a small-scale discharge low-risk zone for the assessment of nutrient neutrality. Our NN assessment has demonstrated that each of the criteria have been met. You've heard from the officer that there's further work to do on that. We'll undertake that further work to address any outstanding issues. Committee report states the council policy for a new dwelling has provided mitigation for GRAMs via a section 106. Our clients have completed and signed the unilateral undertaking, and therefore those requirements will be met as part of these proposals. In conclusion, the proposal is acceptable in design and landscape terms, with no significant impact on neighbours, highway safety or landscape concerns. The council is unable to demonstrate a 5-year supply for housing applications submitted before December 23, such as this, and there are no adverse impacts of the development which outweigh the benefits of a legitimate self-built dwelling in a sustainable location. Furthermore, the proposals meet the requirements of adopted policy 7.5 of the GNLP and will deliver a legitimate self-built home to contribute to the council's targets. Based on this assessment and the details contained in your officer's committee report, we respectfully propose that the planning permission should be granted. If members, however, decide to refuse the application, we do feel that an appeal would be justified in this case. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any points you want clarified from that? No? Okay, Matthew, if you'd like to go back. Thank you. Right, we go to general discussion. Does anybody have any points they wish to raise? I knew you would, Paul. Go on.
Can't resist it.
And me.
So, for me, this is another example of building on a greenfield site, and we've had a lot of them come up recently, and so I'm not. That puts me against this because it you know, it's a farmer's field, and, you know, adds to the sprawling nature of towns. I'd rather people were using, you know, brownfield or greyfield sites. I don't really see what benefit is to the community for this. If it was a bigger housing estate, then you could say you've got affordable homes, which you have up Crocus, up the road. There are lots of affordable homes. You've got some, you know, defined benefits. This is a house for one family. It's a huge house as well. It's not really going to fit in with the surrounding houses. It's very different compared to the other houses. And as you can see it from the road. I mean, it's not like you can hide it completely. So they're my concerns. But I take a point that, you know, GNLP says that we can do this. This is allowed, this sort of thing. So that's my thoughts anyway on it. No conclusions.
I think we do have to remember we have adopted the general Greater Norwich local plan. And this is covered by 7.5. I do find this acceptable. Anybody else have any comments? Ken, sorry. Thank you.
Yes, to me this is a very marginal application to consider, because, you know, the balance between benefit and harm, I mean, is being put very strongly by the officers and by Matthew, but equally the lady who put her points, to me, that I can very well understand where she's coming from. We can, if we consider this just by itself, I can see that there is, perhaps on balance for me, a benefit. But as was raised, if you look at that site, unless I've misunderstood it, it's obviously one. If this is approved, there is, I think, going to be applications for further development. But you may be able to correct me there. But if there was, and if those were refused, I think if they were appealed, I think they would get it. And just help me, is there any way that we can put in a condition that there is no more development?
I'm going to
I
bring
didn't
Ben in
think
on
we
this one,
could.
please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just answer that question. Look, you'll know as well as I do, Ken, there's nothing to stop a planning application coming in on the site at any point. There's nothing to stop a planning application coming in on the site at any point. We can't stop that. But what we can do as part of this application is if we were to approve it, we could condition a landscaping scheme as part of the development. If the landscaping scheme is in place, then we would have, in effect, control over what that looks like. So I'm not saying that would stop it, but we have the opportunity at least to control that. The other thing I'd look at as well is obviously if the applicant goes and builds the property, then if you look at the plan that's on screen at the moment, actually, there's no access in there as such to get to the rear garden. And I think to add to the third point to it, if there is a nutrient neutrality scheme that's using that rear garden area, well, we would be requiring that to stay in perpetuity for the lifetime of the development. So whilst I can't give you a promise that we'll be able to stop an application coming in, I think what we have here is an application that would deliver one dwelling, and we would have reasonable confidence that that's what would be delivered on the scheme. But as you'll know, and I just go back to the starting point, you can never say never in planning, can you? Because we've all been and seen it before. But that's the confidence I can try to give you.
And the balance, the official groups on both environmental and highways have made no comments at all, which I'm quite surprised when you hear the points made by the lady who is local and right on the spot.
I think just the point to make, sorry, just jump in again, is rather than no comments, it's no objections to the scheme. I think that's an important point to raise. And if we've got the experts saying there's no objections to the scheme, again, as you know, we as officers follow their guidance on this, and we wouldn't be inclined to go against it, because we wouldn't be, we would struggle then if we went to an appeal situation to go against them.
And, if you're suggesting, I think, if it was refused and then it was appealed, you think there's more than likely that they would get the approval.
If we were to go down the line of something that one of the statutory consultees had not objected to, then yes.
I'll just point out landscaping scheme is covered under the conditions, Ken.
I'm sorry.
The landscaping scheme is covered under the conditions.
Yeah.
Number 4. Okay. Alan, you want to say something?
Yes, thank you. And I understand why this has come to planning committee, because it is a difficult case. I mean, we see that Coltishall Parish Council have raised strong objections. We've got the objection from the district councillor. We've had letters of objection from local residents who obviously know the area. And I do have serious concerns in the same way as Councillor Auber about the encroachment onto green agricultural land in Broadland. I know it's grade 3, it's not 1 or 2, but it is a concern. So I think we have to accept that this application will have an impact on the landscape in Broadland. And of course the site is outside the existing settlement boundary and it's not connected to the main sewer. But again, you mentioned the tilted balance. We have to take that into consideration, and we have to look at it in terms of planning policy. And I think the positive points are, well, it contributes to self-build provision in the district. The council does need to provide that, so that does, that's a positive. I think the energy efficiency design is really high in this building. Highways have no objection, so we do have to take that. They're a major consultee, so the fact that they haven't raised an objection, we have to consider. And also, of course, policy 7.5 in the GNLP is this really key policy in this. So when the application came in, we hadn't adopted the GNLP. So we would be, I think, really struggling to defend ourselves if we decided to go against that policy. And also, unfortunately, at the time, we have to look at the date the application came in before the 23rd of December, so it has to be considered we didn't have a 5-year housing land supply, and those are really, really key policy matters to consider. Looking at the design of the property, I'm actually quite pleased to see the inclusion of an orchard and a rewilding area on the site. I have to say, I think it will be a very interesting, well-designed, sustainable building. I would like to see more of these sorts of buildings incorporating similar sustainable design features in Broadland. So when I look at the balance, I would have to say that I would go for approval on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. I think you covered everything I was going to say. If there's no other questions, Bibin? Yes, certainly.
Even though the highway didn't have any objection, I'm concerned about the traffic. So my question is there any chance that we could make a condition? We can add a condition that there should not be shouldn't be any parked vehicle during the school run time. Can we make any condition like that?
Unfortunately, we can't do that. We've the highways is a county council adopted highway. If you know the street, there are restrictions on it. On one side of the road, it's got those zigzag lines for school. It says school, keep clear. You know what I mean. I'm sure they've got a proper name for them. The other side of the road, however, is unrestricted in terms of parking. There's no yellow lines down there. We couldn't justify one extra house leading to yellow lines on that road. It wouldn't be justifiable as part of the scheme. It wouldn't be enough. If we had a condition, it needs to be added to make the scheme acceptable. In our view, the scheme's acceptable as it is. Because actually, if we look at the scheme, well, if there are children within this house, they're going to walk to the school, aren't they? So they wouldn't have any further impact on the school time as a result of this house.
Okay, are we happy to go to the vote? Yes. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
Do we have to have a proposal?
No, I'm not just go for a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Does anyone wish for a break quickly, or can we go on to the second application? No. Okay. Ms Griffiths, did you wish to stay for the second application, or do you wish to go? You're going to go. Okay. We have reports from Highway. There's no comments. Okay, we're going to go on to application 2, who's Freethorpe. We have Chris presenting this one. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. So item number 2 is application 2023-1905, which is 75 The Green in Freethorpe. The application seeks permission for the demolition of an existing commercial building and the erection of 2 semi-detached dwellings. Before I go too far into my presentation, I just want to note that on the committee plan for the item in this agenda, the South Norfolk logo, which is used, at the bottom of the plan, which is of course an error. So my apologies for that. But it's considered overall. It won't happen again. But it's considered overall that it has no impact on the determination of the application. So just to put the site and the application into a bit of context, I'll just go through the slides. So first of all, we've got the plan here which shows land outlined in blue, and that covers the application site as well, and that has historically been used for commercial uses. Its last use was vehicle sales and a petrol filling station, and historically there's been several permissions on the wider site for residential development. The latest applications was for 19 dwellings. Those previous applications for residential development across the wider site always included the retention of an office building, which is within the red outlined site, which is being considered today. So this application is to now demolish that building and to have 2 dwellings in that location. So this just gives a bit more context as to where we are. So hopefully you can see the application site is towards the top of your screen. And we've got a fairly linear form of development in Freethorpe, and you can see some of the amenity and services and amenities within Freethorpe. So you've got the convenience store, which is a stone's throw away to the north of the site, and then you've got the preschool and primary school down here where the cursor is, and just off this plan, but to the south side of School Road. Hopefully you might just be able to make out where you've got the village hall and playing fields there. They are within walking distance on a public footpath, and so it's considered that the site is within a sustainable location. This next slide shows the orange hatched area is indicating the development boundary for Freethorpe. So again, the site is within the defined development boundary and accords with policy GC2 in terms of it being acceptable in terms of residential development. So in terms of the principle of residential development in this location, it's considered to be acceptable. This plan also shows the properties outlined in purple are indicating grade 2 listed buildings, and they include the 4 nearest properties immediately to the south of the site. So this is the latest approved site plan, so you can kind of get a bit more context in terms of the wider development that's already been approved. To note, these properties, they're about halfway through kind of building out this development. The residential scheme, as you can see, kind of set out around a kind of internal kind of central access road. They're all 2-storey properties. The commercial building, it's worth noting at this point, we do have a policy which states that any sites which were last used for employment shall continue to be used for employment unless it's been demonstrated that it's not viable to do so. In accordance with this, the site has been marketed for a period of 10 months with no offers being made, and it's considered that it has been adequately demonstrated that it is not viable to continue in a commercial use going forward. So we're comfortable that policy E2 has been met. So this is the proposed site plan. I will just zoom in slightly in a moment, but this hopefully just gives a bit of context in terms of the wider development. You can see the neighbouring property to the south. They have objected to the application. I'll come to some of those points in a moment. The other point to note is that the design of the property has been tried to kind of reflect what has gone on the other development, what's been previously approved. The design of these properties in particular have tried to resemble the plots 1 and 2, which hopefully you can see my cursor, which are on the north side of the estate road. They are kind of trying to be reflective of some of the kind of cottage style properties which are to the north and south. And they've got some kind of brick detailing which reflects that as well. The properties here are kind of in a similar footprint. They're smaller footprint but similar kind of positioning, if you like, to the commercial building. One of the reasons for that is because the drainage design for the wider scheme incorporates a soakaway at the front of the site which is to be retained, and the drainage is going to be kind of continuing that same drainage scheme. This will just flow into that instead of the commercial building flowing into that. This will drain into that soakaway as well. So this is a zoomed in version which I promised, which hopefully just gives you a bit of a clearer, certainly in terms of the parking situation. You can see 3 parking spaces for each of the dwellings, which is in accordance with Norfolk County Council parking standards. The other points to note is with regards to some of the comments that the neighbours made to the south. So they've raised concerns with regards to overlooking. There's only one window at the first floor level to the south of the site, which is fairly central, and that will be a bathroom window which is shown as being obscure glazed, and that's going to be conditioned to ensure that that's the case in perpetuity. The windows at first floor level, which are to the rear of the property, have a view which kind of go down the garden and, if anything, towards some of the other new properties rather than towards the neighbour to the south. Concerns have also been raised with regards to loss of light, but it's considered that given that the property is to the north of the dwelling, that wouldn't be a significant issue. One of the other key concerns that have been raised is with regards to the height of the dwellings proposed, and then being kind of dominant and overbearing, and I've got a slide which hopefully can kind of show you that a little bit better, which I'll show you shortly. I don't expect you to be able to kind of make out each room, but hopefully this just gives you a kind of rough idea of the floor plans. You've got quite an open plan kitchen, dining, sitting area to the rear of the properties, and utility and studies to the front, and at first floor level 4 bedrooms and a bathroom. So these are the elevational plans, so hopefully you can see fairly traditional kind of form of kind of semi-detached properties, but you've got some kind of quite local characteristics in terms of the brick detailing, brick coin detailing on the sides with a different colour brick, and central detailing which will break up the property in the massing of that brickwork, and some timber porches as well, which kind of helps to kind of give that kind of more rural feel to the properties. Like I say, they reflect both the surroundings and the development which has been approved on the wider site. This plan is one which has been submitted to kind of give a bit of a better context of both the wider site and the neighbouring properties. So in terms of going back to one of the neighbour concerns with regards to the property proposed being kind of dominant and overbearing, it is acknowledged that they are higher in height than that neighbouring property to the south, which is number 73, and as I said earlier, is one of the listed buildings nearby. That has obviously been considered during the course of the application. Some points to note with regards to that. First of all, there is an existing commercial building on the site, which, whilst 800 millimetres lower in height, is a substantial building, and is over 100 square metres bigger in terms of footprint as well. So it's not like we're kind of on an agricultural field here. We are replacing that building, and historically there was then a petrol filling station and forecourt and what have you further along. The other points to note is that what's already been approved on the site, we've got some properties which are of only 300 millimetre difference on the other side of the estate road, and some properties that are even higher, including the properties immediately to the west. So it's in context with what's already been approved as well. A further point is that there is some degree of separation. You've got an existing garage on the boundary, and so it's not hard up to the boundary, and also that the properties are set back. So you'll see from some photos shortly. The neighbour at number 73 has 3 first floor windows to their northern elevation, and that will help to lessen the impact on that neighbour. So just to go through some photographs, this is on the approach to the site from the south, so you can see the neighbouring property which I've made reference to is in here where my cursor is at the moment. Can't really see the site because it's behind those trees, but we'll come to that shortly. This is on the approach from the north, and these are 2 of the properties that have already been built, plots 1 and 2 that I made reference to. This is standing on the footpath outside of number 73. You can see their existing kind of low wall. The proposed fencing would be higher than what you can see here. The land levels have been dropped on the other side for the drainage to go in, but you can start to see obviously the commercial building in place at the moment. And this is a view from the street, so you can kind of see that relationship. I mentioned the free first floor windows. One of the reasons the property is set back, not just for the drainage details, but also because of lessening that impact, because it was felt that if it was kind of further forward, that would kind of ruin any kind of view and be more kind of overbearing and dominant for that neighbouring property. This is a view from within the site where you can see obviously development is well underway elsewhere, and you can see the commercial building here on the left-hand side. Another point to make at this stage is that the commercial building has been empty for a number of years and is in a bit of a sorry state. So we've got kind of boarded up windows and guttering that's started to fail. So again, it's considered that the development of the site of this parcel of land would help to tidy up the site, and not just for the kind of future occupiers of these properties, but also neighbouring properties, including those to the south as well. I included this slide just to show you the kind of quality of design. I think the properties that have been developed look of a high standard. You've got some of those brick detailing, for example, that we run through the centre here, stone windowsills, the brick coins and what have you, which are, like I say, reflective of some of the design features elsewhere within the existing street scene. This is a view of the rear of the commercial building, just given that context. The neighbouring garden is just over the fence here. And again, that's just panning around to the front of the site. And this is the final photo, which I think gives a fair assessment of what you can see from the street scene and the impact between the two properties at the moment. So I'll just leave you with that slide whilst I just go through the remainder of the assessment. So overall, it's considered that the application is located in an acceptable location for new housing, in a sustainable location and within the defined development boundaries of Freethorpe. Although the proposals will result in the loss of an employment unit, the building has been vacant for a number of years and has been marketed for a period of over 10 months with no offers being made. It is therefore considered that it is adequately demonstrated that the continued employment use is not viable and the proposal sufficiently meets the requirements of policy E2 of the Development Management DPD. Furthermore, the proposals are not considered to cause significant harm to the character and appearance of the area, the nearby list of buildings, residential amenity, highway safety, ecology or flooding and drainage. It is therefore recommended to delegate authority to the Assistant Director of Planning to approve the application subject to completing the unilateral undertaking for JIRAMs and subject to conditions listed in the agenda, the highway conditions once confirmed, and the additional condition relating to the finished floor levels, which was noted in the supplementary schedule. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. So any points need clarifying? Paul?
Thank you, Chair. My understanding was, and I like the scheme, but are we confident that it's been marketed well enough for, and I thought it was supposed to be 12 months that it was supposed to be marketed for, and you've only said 10.
Yes, so the application was originally submitted without any kind of marketing at all, and obviously the policy requires that kind of marketing. The actual policy text doesn't necessarily say that, but it says it's normally expected that within the subtext, normally expected for it to be 12 months. Historically, planning committee and us as officers have kind of been pragmatic in certain circumstances and have accepted less in the past. In this case, we felt that kind of 10 months was acceptable. At the time I said, look, go away and do a minimum of 6 months. They've gone away and done 10, it's over 10 now, I think we're getting on to 10 and a half months. So we're near enough there, and I think overall, on balance, we're comfortable with that it's adequately been demonstrated. The other point to note is that it's kind of an office building, and they've marketed it at kind of overall commercial, so they've not going to limit it down as an office building. They've kind of tried to be as broad as they can as well.
Well, I think you stated it was empty for a few years as well.
Yeah, it's a fair point. It's been, although it's only been marketed for the last 10 months or just over, it's been empty for a number of years. I don't actually know how many years, but it's we're talking kind of over 3 years.
Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Christopher, I think this is a really good use of a long, sort of redundant building. I mean, it stood there for absolutely years. You can see from the photographs it is failing. It is a complete eyesore. So I welcome this going into housing. The only point that I need clarity on is in 4.6, the NCC highway report. It's slightly confusing because obviously the other site is being built through and access is from the larger site of the 19 houses. Oh, it's on page 32 of my papers. So is that access established and is this site ready to go forward? That's the only thing I want clarity on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a fair question. Those highway comments were their original comments, and they have since come back and said we're comfortable, we've got no objection. I think the original highway comments came at a time when either they hadn't started on site at that point, or the highways weren't aware that they'd started. So I think there was they wanted some level of comfort that the other scheme was going to come forward and that access could be utilised. But they're comfortable with that. We're just waiting for confirmation of their final conditions.
Hi, thank you for your report. In paragraph 4.5 from the Heritage Officer, he or she has suggested that parking spaces could be clearly marked. Is that going to be done?
Again, those comments were on previous plans, so the plan that I've actually got up on the screen at the moment now does that with regards to I think previously it was kind of left on one of the original iterations, it was left as an open kind of parking area. But we've now clearly got kind of free parking spaces for each property, which, like I say, meets the guidance.
Thank you. And just on the conditions, I think condition 9 has put a restriction on the installation of air source heat pumps, and I just wondered what the reason was for that. Yeah, sure. That condition comes from a request from the council's environmental health officer. I think it's related to noise impact and impact on neighbours, so that's the reason for that.
We have no public speakers, so we'll go direct to discussions. Anybody?
Me again, thank you, Chair. Well, I think, in my view, this is an excellent example of using what is an old building and turning it into 2 semi-detached properties that fit much better with the street scene, I think, than the previous one, and remove the risk of any further traffic increase from having a commercial building there if it was to get used in the future. I think it's been subject to a good amount of thought and design. I like the thought process that's gone in the report there that shows all the iterations that's gone through with the heritage. I don't think it's going to detract from the listed buildings that are there because it's been set back. So that's also very good. I think the concerns from neighbours have been considered, which is really good, with the obscure glass to the bathroom. The only thing I'm disappointed is in the number of affordable homes in this housing estate in total, because I think there's only 3 out of what will be 21 now. I would have liked to have seen that up more at the normal 7. So I'm disappointed about that, but it's only a small site, so I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I fully support this development. Thank you.
Are you happy to go to the vote? Okay. Oh, Eleanor.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I would like to reiterate Councillor Auber's comments in that I'm very happy with the design. I too am disappointed with the lack of affordable homes. It doesn't fit with the policy in the GNLP. It actually falls well short. And although I'm happy to go ahead with the approval of this planning application, I'd like to hope that this wouldn't happen again in Broadland and that we would be pushing for to have the policy recognised in the GNLP and have 30% affordable homes. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. Right, I am proposing we accept this application. All those in favour, please. Thank you, that's unanimous. I'm going to hand over to Ben for the planning appeals.
Thank you, Chair. We've got a few for noting. Today we have one planning appeal that has been received, and that is for it's actually an enforcement case at Western Equestrian Centre, and the enforcement action is that there's non-compliance of conditions relating to planning permission 2012-1195, which are holiday lets that are being occupied permanently. So we'll see how that one goes, and we'll refer that back to members at the appropriate time. And then we've had 3 decisions since the last meeting. The first one is in Marsham on 34 High Street. The application there was for a proposed detached chalet bungalow with 2 parking spaces. The appeal was dismissed. Then we had a second one at Thorpe St Andrew, land opposite 22 Thor Road. That was an outline application for 2 semi-detached dwellings. That application was also dismissed. And then to complete the hat trick, we were at Oaks Meadow in Hainford, which is the creation of 5 holiday lodges with the reception building and new vehicle access, and that was also dismissed as well. So decision making has followed through, which is a positive to see.
Thank you. Right, I'll bring the meeting to a close at 10:40. Thank you everyone for attending.